Have you ever met someone who wasn't loud, didn't try to prove anything, but somehow everything they said made you pause and think? That's real intelligence, and it doesn't come from cramming facts or chasing degrees. It comes from how you live, what you notice, what you practice, what you reflect on. Every single day, the Stoics believed wisdom wasn't a gift. It was a discipline, a daily effort to shape your mind with clarity, resilience, and quiet strength. In this video, we'll break down 15 daily habits that don't just make you smarter, they make you unshakably wise. These are habits the Stoics live by, habits that sharpen your focus, deepen your insight, and transform the way you move through the world. And the best part? You don't need to change your entire life overnight. You just need to start. So if you're tired of mental clutter, shallow thinking, and always reacting instead of responding, stay with me, because by the end of this video, you won't just be thinking more clearly, you'll be living more intelligently. And before we dive in, if you find wisdom more valuable than noise, hit that like button and subscribe for more Stoic strategies that help you train your mind, not just your memory. Let's begin.
Number 1.
Ask relentless questions. Curiosity is not a childish pastime. It is the forge where a sharper mind is made. The Stoics treated every event, every conversation, and every inner whisper as an invitation to probe more deeply. Epictetus urged his students to test impressions the way a banker tests a coin, striking each thought against reason to hear its true ring. When you ask why, what if, or how else, you refuse to drift in the shallow current of popular opinion. You force the mind to stretch, flex, and strengthen through deliberate interrogation, turning vague impressions into clear understanding. Consider Leonardo da Vinci, painter, engineer, and anatomist. Though not a Stoic by title, his lifelong habit of filling notebooks with questions mirrored Stoic rigor. One afternoon, he set himself a strange challenge. Describe the tongue of the woodpecker, a trivial detail? Far from it. By training himself to notice what everyone ignored, he developed the mental elasticity that later sketched flying machines centuries before aviation existed. Intelligence grows whenever curiosity drags it beyond the obvious. And this willingness to look twice remains the signature of a refined mind. Now weave this habit into your own day. When a colleague presents a flawless proposal, resist the polite nod and ask, which hidden assumption could wreck this plan? When a headline tries to ignite outrage, pause and wonder, who gains if I react instantly? These micro-interrogations, practiced consistently, slice through mental haze like a scalpel. Questions cost nothing, yet they demand attention and humility. Seneca warned that many people wander in the dark, following the tracks of others. Questions are the lanterns that end the wandering, and when an inquiry feels uncomfortable, that is proof you have begun to think for yourself. Yet even the sharpest question is only a seed. For it to bear fruit, you must plant it in silence and water it with patience. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire yet still a student of his own mind, rose before dawn to journal, cross-examine motives, and prune faulty judgments. He understood that answers delivered too quickly breed complacency. Therefore, allow your questions to linger. Let them unsettle you, soften the crust of certainty, and invite deeper insight the way gentle rain invites seeds to germinate. Here is your Stoic drill. Each sunrise, write one decisive inquiry. What truth am I resisting today? Carry it with you, revisit it before sleep, and record how your perspective evolves. Each repetition sharpens perception the way a whetstone hones a blade, gradually, invisibly, yet unmistakably. Soon you will notice patterns others miss, nuances others flatten, and opportunities others dismiss. By cultivating this practice, intelligence ceases to be a dusty trophy on a shelf. It becomes a living flame that brightens every thought, conversation, and decision you face.
Number 2.
Read varied genres. Most people read only what confirms what they already know. They scroll through headlines that echo their beliefs, skim content that flatters their worldview, and avoid anything unfamiliar or uncomfortable. But the Stoics, true seekers of wisdom, warned against this kind of intellectual laziness. Seneca wrote, "You must linger among a limited number of master thinkers and digest their works if you would derive ideas which shall win firm hold in your mind." But even as he praised depth, he also understood the value of diversity, of exposing the mind to opposing views, foreign systems, and new mental terrain. Reading widely isn't just for entertainment or trivia. It's mental cross-training. Each genre, each voice, each philosophy challenges your default wiring and builds new neural pathways. Philosophy strengthens logic and clarity. Poetry refines emotional nuance. Science disciplines your attention to detail. Fiction expands empathy, teaches pacing, and sharpens pattern recognition. Even comic books and children's literature, when read attentively, can offer perspectives that adults often overlook. When you pick up a detective novel, you're not just reading a story. You're learning how to trace subtle connections, build hypotheses, and sit with uncertainty. When you study Taoism after reading Marcus Aurelius, you're not betraying Stoicism. You're strengthening it by contrast, refining your ability to synthesize and evaluate. This ability to hold two ideas without rushing to judgment is a mark of true intelligence. Marcus Aurelius himself was a living example of this kind of intellectual openness. Though grounded in Stoic discipline, his meditations show the imprint of diverse influences: Plato, Heraclitus, Epictetus. He didn't borrow ideas to be trendy. He tested them, molded them, integrated them until they aligned with reason and nature. That's how a mind matures, through comparison, contrast, and courageous adaptation. So how do you make this a habit? Make your reading time sacred. Set aside 20 minutes a day and rotate across disciplines. Keep a journal. Write not just what you learned, but how it changed you. What belief did this book challenge? What truth did it confirm? What emotion did it stir that you didn't expect? And above all, stop reading to finish. Start reading to transform. Seneca compared the mind to a stomach. If you consume too much without digestion, you become bloated with knowledge that never becomes action. But when you chew slowly, reflect intentionally, and connect one idea to another, you build a resilient, adaptive intellect. There's a Greek word, kairos. It means the opportune moment. Every book contains a kairos, an invisible, irreversible moment of growth waiting to happen, but only if you read with attention, humility, and courage. So don't just aim to read more books, aim to become more through every page. Because on the Stoic path, the true measure of wisdom isn't how much you've read, it's how deeply you've changed.
Number 3.
Surround yourself with smart people. If you want to grow, stop trying to be the smartest person in the room. The Stoics believed that wisdom wasn't something you achieved in isolation. It was forged in dialogue, sharpened by disagreement, and humbled by better minds. Seneca once said, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you, not flatter you, not echo your opinions, but challenge your thinking, question your assumptions, and elevate your standard for what's possible." Because here's the hard truth. When you surround yourself with shallow conversation, your thoughts shrink to fit the room. But when you're consistently exposed to thoughtful, curious, and disciplined minds, your thinking expands. It's not about copying their beliefs, it's about being in the gravitational field of mental seriousness. Imagine being close to someone who reads deeply, reflects often, and holds themselves to a high ethical and intellectual standard. Over time, your own standards begin to rise, not out of pressure, but out of quiet inspiration. Intelligence is contagious, but only if you're willing to be exposed to it. Consider Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau. Emerson didn't try to mold Thoreau into a replica of himself. Instead, he offered questions, ideas, and space to grow. Thoreau took those seeds and cultivated his own radical clarity. What you see in that relationship isn't imitation, it's ignition. Great minds don't replicate each other, they awaken each other. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, praises his mentor Rusticus, not because he coddled him, but because Rusticus challenged his writing, confronted his faults, and pushed him to think more clearly. That's real friendship. It's not just warmth, it's heat. And Marcus was wise enough not to resent that heat, but to welcome it, because he knew only what endures friction becomes strong. Now ask yourself, who in your circle makes you think more deeply? Who stretches your perspective? Who challenges your emotional reactions without hostility, but with honesty? And on the other side, who in your life dulls your edge with gossip, distraction, or surface-level talk that leads nowhere? Upgrading your environment isn't about arrogance, it's about alignment. You cannot build a sharp mind while surrounded by dull energy, and you can't train for mental strength if everyone around you is addicted to comfort. Be kind, but be deliberate. The Stoics were never elitist, but they were selective. They knew that your company shapes your character faster than your willpower does. So if you want to become wiser, surround yourself with those who pursue wisdom. Not noise, not approval, not drama, but depth. Because sometimes the smartest person you can talk to is the one who quietly makes you feel uncomfortable. Not because they look down on you, but because they show you how far you can still rise.
Number 4.
Take time to reflect. In a world obsessed with speed, reflection feels like a luxury. But to the Stoics, it was a form of survival, a daily discipline as vital as breathing. Seneca warned, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And the only way to distinguish the two is to pause long enough to investigate your thoughts. Without reflection, you're not living, you're reacting. And a reactive mind is a fragile mind. Easily provoked, easily misled, and easily exhausted. Reflection is not overthinking, it's structured stillness. It's a calm, deliberate pause, a way of stepping outside your emotional weather to observe the climate of your character. You ask yourself, what story am I believing right now? Is it true? Is it serving me? Marcus Aurelius made this his nightly ritual. He didn't write his meditations for history. He wrote them to heal, to refine, to clarify. He understood that the unexamined mind becomes a haunted theater, full of regrets, projections, illusions. But the moment you stop to observe it, those ghosts lose their grip. Think of a sculptor working with stone. He doesn't strike endlessly. He steps back, examines, recalibrates, then carves again. That's reflection. Without it, you might be working hard, but shaping a life you never truly chose. Action without reflection is motion without meaning. And this doesn't only apply to work, it applies to relationships too. Without reflection, a single sharp word becomes a week of resentment. Without reflection, your own pain gets disguised as someone else's failure. But when you slow down and look inward, you soften. You remember your values. You move from blame to responsibility, from noise to clarity. So how do you practice it? Begin small. Take 5 minutes at the end of each day. No phone, no noise. Just you, a journal, and your raw honesty. Ask yourself, what did I learn today? What disturbed me and why? What did I do well? What would I do differently? Don't judge your answers. Let them flow. Over time, you'll begin to see your own patterns. Thought loops, emotional habits, invisible triggers. You'll learn to interrupt them not just in hindsight, but in real time. The Stoics weren't born wise, they stumbled, they failed. But what set them apart was their willingness to look inward, to stop, to examine. As Epictetus said, you become what you give your attention to. And if you never pause to notice where your attention goes, it gets hijacked by whatever is loudest. So give yourself the gift of inner space, not once a year, not just in crisis, but every day. Because in that quiet, reflective moment, you're not escaping life, you're shaping it. And that kind of stillness, that's not indulgence, that's power.
Number 5.
Exercise regularly. To the Stoics, physical training was never about appearance. It was about mastery, not over others, but over the self. Epictetus said, difficulties show a person's character, and physical exertion creates difficulty on command. Every time you train your body, you train your will. You say, I can do hard things and I don't have to run from discomfort. Modern life makes movement optional. Elevators, screens, remote work, food delivery. It's easy to live an entire week without ever breaking a sweat. But what's the hidden cost of that comfort? An anxious mind, a restless body, a weakening of resilience. The Stoics knew that luxury without resistance breeds fragility. They believed the body should be tested, not to look good, but to stay good, to remain useful, focused, grounded in reality. Exercise is a Stoic ritual in disguise. It's controlled adversity, a space where you voluntarily enter struggle, not because you enjoy pain, but because you value growth. Marcus Aurelius wrote about rising early, even when his body begged him to stay in bed. He reminded himself, you were born to do what you were trained to do. And the training wasn't just mental, it was physical. He saw effort as sacred, a daily vote for his higher self. Take Socrates. Though technically not a Stoic, he embodied their spirit. He walked barefoot, trained in wrestling, and encouraged balance between body and mind. To him, wisdom didn't come from books alone. It was forged through movement, breath, and discipline. He showed that philosophy isn't just something you think. It's something you live through your choices. Exercise brings you back to the present. When your lungs are burning and your muscles are shaking, the mind stops spinning. You're no longer obsessing over what they said or worrying about what might happen. You're here, alive, grounded. That presence is rare, and it's earned through sweat. But remember, this is not about punishment, it's about practice. Choose something that challenges you without overwhelming you. Walk with intention, stretch with awareness, train with humility. You don't need a six-pack, you need a spine. The Stoics believed in harmony between body, mind, and soul. If you neglect one, the others suffer. But when you move your body daily, your thinking sharpens, your mood stabilizes, your discipline carries over into everything else. Suddenly, hard conversations feel easier. Mental chaos feels manageable. Why? Because you've trained yourself to breathe through the fire. So next time your thoughts feel scattered, don't just try to fix them with more thinking. Step into motion, let your body lead your mind. Because sometimes the most powerful path back to clarity isn't through sitting still, it's through moving forward, one breath at a time. Number 6, prioritize healthy eating. To the Stoics, discipline was not limited to speech or behavior. It extended to what entered the body. Food was not about indulgence, it was about integrity. Epictetus taught, we should not eat to please the palate, but to strengthen the body. And in a society that celebrates convenience over consciousness, choosing food that serves your clarity rather than your cravings is a revolutionary act of intelligence. Today's food environment is engineered for distraction, processed sugar, artificial flavoring, endless snacking. These things don't nourish you, they numb you. You may not connect your brain fog, mood swings, or emotional instability to your breakfast, but the connection is there. The Stoics would urge, look deeper. Don't just ask how you feel, ask why. Pythagoras, though not a Stoic by name, embodied their principles through his diet. He avoided gluttony not out of vanity, but out of reverence for clarity. He believed what you consume becomes part of how you think. That's the core of Stoicism. If you can't say no to a craving, how will you say no to anger? If you can't delay the pleasure of taste, how will you delay the impulse to react? The ability to choose wisely at the table reflects your ability to choose wisely in life. But this isn't about guilt or extreme rules. This is about presence, about learning to listen to your body without being ruled by it. Ask before each meal, will this give me energy or steal it? Will this support clarity or create chaos? Most people eat reactively. A Stoic eats intentionally. Not obsessively, but with respect, not for image, but for inner order. Seneca once said he could be content with bread and water, not because he despised pleasure, but because he refused to become its slave. And that's the difference. Pleasure is not the enemy, dependence is. When you simplify what you eat, you unchain yourself, not just from physical cravings, but from mental clutter. So how do you apply this? Start small. Keep a food journal, not to track numbers, but to track awareness. What did you eat? How did it make you feel an hour later? More focused or more sluggish? More grounded or more reactive? Begin to notice the patterns. Let your diet evolve from experiment to wisdom. The Stoics didn't measure meals in calories. They measured them in consequence. Because what you eat eventually becomes how you feel, how you show up, how you think under pressure. A foggy body clouds the mind. A clean fuel source clears the path. So eat not to impress, not to escape, but to endure, to think and to thrive. Because when your foundation is strong, your mind can rise without resistance. Number 7, keep a journal. To the Stoics, journaling wasn't a trendy productivity hack. It was a form of spiritual discipline, a sacred ritual to examine thoughts, test impressions, and separate illusion from truth. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his meditations for an audience. He wrote them to survive his own inner chaos, to ground himself in clarity, to return again and again to reason, especially when the world tried to pull him into noise. Journaling isn't about writing beautifully, it's about writing honestly. It's not about routine, it's about revelation. When you put your thoughts on paper, something powerful happens. You slow them down, you catch distortions before they calcify into beliefs. You begin to see how often you exaggerate your fears, minimize your strengths, or carry emotions that were never yours to begin with. The page becomes a mirror, not to flatter you, but to reveal you, and with each entry, your inner vision sharpens. Epictetus urged his students to write daily because he understood that truth decays without repetition. He believed philosophy had to be written down day and night, not to impress others, but to protect the self. Journaling, then, becomes a kind of resistance. In a world that pushes you to react, it pulls you back to observe. It teaches you to hold still, think clearly, and live intentionally. Consider Leonardo da Vinci, not a Stoic in doctrine, but in discipline. His notebooks were wild, chaotic, and often incomplete. But in that chaos, his questions became architecture. His frustrations became insight. He didn't write to perform. He wrote to process, to make sense of complexity, to remember what mattered. Your journal doesn't need to be organized. It needs to be real, a place where your rawness is welcome and your growth becomes visible, line by line. So how do you journal like a Stoic? Ask sharp questions. Where did I act with wisdom today? Where did I fall short and why? What fear am I still carrying that no longer serves me? You don't write to relive the day. You write to reclaim it. You don't need a perfect system. You need a willingness to sit with your truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. Over time, you'll see patterns. You'll recognize the stories you keep repeating. You'll catch your own self-sabotage before it plays out. And more than anything, you'll start to trust your own voice, not the voice of fear, not the voice of approval, but the voice that emerges only when you're brave enough to be alone with yourself. The Stoics believed wisdom doesn't arrive all at once. It accumulates, like dew on a quiet morning, slowly, silently, page by page. So if you want to grow smarter every day, don't just read the thoughts of others, write your own, because the wisest voice you'll ever hear is the one you've taken the time to cultivate in silence. Number 8, try something new. The Stoics understood that comfort is not your friend, it's your cage. What feels safe and predictable today can quietly become the very thing that limits your future. Seneca warned, a ship should not ride near the shore for too long. If you avoid what's new, not because it's unwise, but because it's uncomfortable, you gradually shrink your world. And when your world shrinks, your mind follows. Trying something new isn't about chasing novelty or escaping boredom. It's about challenging your limits. Every unfamiliar experience disrupts mental autopilot. It forces you to wake up, to re-engage, to stretch your perception, whether it's learning a new skill, entering a new conversation, or stepping into a new environment. You are exercising the very muscle that Stoicism prizes most, adaptability, and adaptability is intelligence in motion. Look at Benjamin Franklin. He didn't define himself with a single title. He was a statesman, a scientist, a printer, a philosopher. He taught himself French, built libraries, flew kites into storms, and questioned everything, from politics to personal virtue. His wisdom didn't grow because he mastered one narrow field. It grew because he kept throwing himself into new challenges. He remained a student, curious, unfinished, alert. The Stoic mind doesn't resist the unknown. It leans toward it, not blindly, but bravely. Marcus Aurelius often meditated on change, not just to tolerate it, but to train for it, because life is change. And if you want to remain strong through it, you must stretch before the storm arrives. Trying something new is one way to rehearse uncertainty, voluntarily on your own terms. That's not recklessness. That's discipline disguised as exploration. So how do you live this? You start small. You don't need to quit your job or fly across the world. Just break one routine, eat with your non-dominant hand, take a cold shower, start a conversation with someone you'd normally avoid. Try a hobby that makes you feel clumsy. Read a book you'd never pick up. These aren't random activities, they are sharp tools designed to keep your mind soft, flexible, and resilient. Seneca once said, "We learn while teaching," but he might have added, "We also learn while fumbling, while starting over, while doing something poorly at first." Intelligence isn't always graceful. Sometimes it begins in awkwardness, in resistance, in that strange feeling of not knowing. But stay with it. That's where the transformation lives. The Stoic path is not about rigidity. It's about evolution. Routine gives you structure, but stepping outside of it gives you range. You can't grow smarter if your life is on repeat. You have to be willing to shake the dust, to embrace the awkward, to try the unfamiliar. Not to collect experiences, but to build range. Because the mind that stays curious stays sharp. And in Stoic terms, sharpness is strength. Number 9, apply and share knowledge. Knowledge kept in silence is like water trapped in a well. It stagnates, turns stale, and eventually serves no one. The Stoics believed wisdom must move, it must circulate. It begins with theory, evolves through practice, and completes itself through teaching. Seneca wrote, "While we teach, we learn." That wasn't a metaphor, it was a method. To truly understand a lesson, you must first apply it, and then find the courage to explain it clearly. You anchor it once through action, you anchor it again through expression, Begin with the first step, application. Reading about temperance is simple. Declining the second glass of wine at a dinner with friends. That's where the lesson begins to solidify. Marcus Aurelius didn't just admire Stoic principles. He tested them daily. He examined his impulses, wrote nightly about his moral victories and failures, and turned philosophy into muscle memory. That habit didn't just shape his thinking, it shaped his identity. You can follow the same path, choose one idea, like focus on what you control, and apply it when your plans fall apart, when someone disrespects you, or when things don't go your way. Feel the resistance. That's the forge of growth. But don't stop there. Application without communication is incomplete. Wisdom only becomes fully alive when it is shared. And sharing doesn't mean preaching. It means offering insight, offering presence, offering vulnerability. Consider Marie Curie. Though not a Stoic by label, she embodied the discipline of service. After discovering radium, she refused to patent the process. Why? Because she believed that truth and progress must benefit the whole, not enrich the few. That act of intellectual generosity didn't just help others, it strengthened her own integrity. Likewise, the physicist Richard Feynman embraced the same rhythm. If you want to master something, he said, teach it. His chalkboard sessions weren't just lectures. They were live experiments in clarity. Every student's question forced him to simplify further, clarify again, and uncover what still wasn't solid. Teaching isn't the end of understanding, it's the furnace where it's tested. So make this a rhythm. Pick one insight each week that you've actually lived, not just skimmed, reposted, or admired. Summarize it honestly, reflect on how it shaped your perception, your tone, or your behavior, then pass it on in a short post, in a private message, in a quiet conversation. Let your voice be part of something bigger than your thoughts. Over time, this cycle, learn, apply, articulate, refine, becomes a mental practice, a tool for insight, a shield against arrogance. Because here's the Stoic truth. Hoarded knowledge inflates the ego, but shared knowledge expands the soul. The Stoic does not stockpile wisdom to appear superior. He lives it, he tests it, he refines it in fire, and offers it without fear, not for applause, but because truth, when acted upon and spoken out loud, becomes something greater than the self. It becomes legacy, and that legacy, quietly passed from one mind to another, is how real change takes root in the world. Number 10, be selective with your time and effort. The Stoics didn't fear exhaustion. They feared wasting themselves, Marcus Aurelius wrote. Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? That wasn't a rhetorical question. It was a command for clarity. Because the greatest threat to intelligence isn't ignorance, it's distraction. Energy scattered is energy lost, and the mind that tries to do everything ends up doing nothing well. In today's world, everything competes for your attention. Notifications, demands, opinions, endless invitations to urgency. But just because something asks for your energy doesn't mean it deserves it. The Stoics trained themselves to say no, not out of selfishness, but out of sovereignty. To choose what matters, you must be willing to let go of what doesn't. That's not laziness, that's discipline. The undisciplined say yes to everything and wonder why they feel overwhelmed. The disciplined subtract until what remains is aligned. Consider Leonardo da Vinci. While he was endlessly curious, he also knew how to focus deeply. He didn't chase every commission or engage every critic. He followed projects that matched his inner calling, and when he painted, he would often pause for hours, even days studying a single gesture. That's the paradox. True genius looks like stillness, because the wise don't rush. They concentrate. They know the difference between motion and progress, between busyness and depth. The Stoic mind doesn't divide itself among trivialities. It filters, it edits. Seneca warned that life is not short, but wasted on meaningless pursuits. The key, he said, is to guard your time as you would your money. You would never let someone steal your wallet in broad daylight. Yet every time you say yes to something unworthy, you've handed over a piece of your life. That moment could have gone to stillness, reflection, or the slow refinement of your craft. But instead, it was lost to noise. So how do you practice this? Start by auditing your calendar like a philosopher. Ask yourself, what am I doing out of habit, out of guilt, out of fear? Then strip away one commitment that drains you, just one. In its place, insert something that nourishes you. Reading, silence, solitude, meaningful creation. Your time is not a landfill. Treat it like sacred ground. If it doesn't bring clarity, purpose, or deep rest, it probably doesn't belong. Being selective doesn't mean being rigid. It means being intentional. The Stoics weren't cold. They were clear. They knew that every yes is also a no, and that saying no isn't rejection, it's redirection toward depth, toward mastery, toward presence. Because at the end of the day, your energy is your currency. Your minutes are your message. What you give yourself to again and again becomes who you are. And if you want to grow smarter, wiser, and more grounded with each passing day, then treat your time as the rarest resource it truly is. Not because you're in a rush, but because you finally understand what's worth slowing down for. Number 11, take short breaks. The Stoics taught that rhythm is wiser than intensity. It's not how hard you go, it's how sustainably you live. Seneca warned that even the most powerful flame, if not tended, will burn itself out. And this is what most people miss. You don't become more effective by pushing harder. You become more effective by pulling back at the right time. Short breaks are not a weakness. They are a form of mental hygiene. Just as the body needs rest between repetitions, the mind needs pauses between challenges. Without them, you begin to confuse effort with progress. You start reacting instead of reflecting. And a reactive mind is not a wise one. It's a fragile one, always on edge, unable to see clearly or choose deliberately. Marcus Aurelius, in the midst of his duties as emperor, often reminded himself to return to stillness. In one passage, he wrote, "People try to get away from it all, to the country, to the beach, to the mountains. You always wish that you could too, but you can get away from it anytime you like by going within." That's what a break is, not escape, but a return to inner balance, to presence, to self-command. You don't need a vacation to reset. You need a few quiet minutes of your own attention. Short pauses throughout your day reset your nervous system. They sharpen perception. They prevent burnout before it begins. Even a few moments of silence between tasks, a few slow breaths before a meeting, or a brief step outside can recalibrate your entire focus. These aren't luxury moments. They are maintenance. And just like sharpening a blade, they prevent you from dulling with overuse. Consider Carl Jung. He would take long walks in nature, often alone, often in silence. He believed the mind needed space not just to think, but to unfold. Some of his deepest insights didn't come while analyzing patients or reading books. They came during moments of rest, solitude, and rhythm. That's not coincidence. That's design. The clarity of a rested mind often surpasses the intensity of a tired one. So how can you make this part of your routine? Start with something small. Set a timer to pause every 90 minutes. During that time, step away from your screen, breathe deeply, stretch, reflect on your last action. Ask, was I present or was I just busy? These small resets have a compound effect. They return you to your priorities. They slow the inner noise. They make space for insight to land. The Stoics didn't wait until they were overwhelmed to rest. They trained themselves to notice early signs of fatigue, mental fog, scattered thoughts, emotional impatience. Breaks weren't indulgences. They were tools. Tools to preserve the only thing you truly own, your attention. And protecting that attention protects your peace. Because wisdom doesn't come from nonstop effort, it comes from clear, sustainable rhythm, and rhythm requires space. Not just once in a while, but again and again, deliberately and without guilt. Number 12. Be organized. The Stoics believed that external order reflects internal clarity. A cluttered space often reveals a cluttered mind. And the act of organizing, of arranging your environment with intention, is not about perfectionism, it's about alignment. It's about reducing friction between you and your highest values. Clean surroundings don't just look good, they help you think better. Seneca once wrote, "If a man does not know to what port he is sailing, no wind is favorable." You may have goals, but without structure, even the best intentions collapse, and structure begins in your physical world. Your desk, your schedule, your surroundings. When these things are chaotic, your mind absorbs the chaos. When they are clean, calm, and purposeful, your thoughts begin to match that tone. You stop chasing tasks and start designing your day with clarity. Being organized doesn't mean being rigid. It means being deliberate. You know where things are. You know what matters today. You remove the little decisions that drain your willpower, and in their place, you create space for deeper focus and peace. This is why many Stoics practice voluntary simplicity, not to deny themselves joy, but to remove what was non-essential, so what mattered could rise to the surface. Look at Steve Jobs. He wore the same outfit every day, not because he lacked style, but because he understood the cost of unnecessary decisions. By simplifying his wardrobe, he preserved energy for higher-level thinking. That small act of organization created room for greater innovation. It wasn't just about time, it was about clarity. Or consider the poet and philosopher Rainer Maria Rilke. He once described how even the arrangement of his writing tools affected the tone of his work. A tidy space signaled reverence, disorder disrupted presence. In other words, the outer world was a cue for the inner one. When his surroundings were composed, his thoughts flowed more freely. So how do you bring this into your daily life? Start small. Choose one area of your environment, your desk, your phone screen, your calendar. Clean it, simplify it. Ask, does this support the life I'm trying to build? If not, let it go. What you own should serve you, not silently drain you. The same applies to your digital world, your files, your tabs, your apps. What you tolerate digitally, you replicate mentally. Then extend that principle to your routines. Block time for thinking, put buffers between tasks, group similar actions together. Organization is not just about where things are. It's about how clearly you move through your life, and clarity is a form of strength. The Stoics didn't believe in controlling everything. They believed in ordering what they could. A tidy room won't fix your soul, but it will remove one more barrier between you and the discipline your soul needs to grow. Because ultimately, intelligence thrives in simplicity. And simplicity isn't lack, it's precision, it's intention, it's peace. Number 13, observe and analyze other people's behavior. The Stoics believe that wisdom begins with observation. Before you speak, before you react. Watch, not to judge, but to understand. Epictetus taught, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." Observation is a form of power. The more clearly you see others, the less likely you are to be fooled by appearances or by your own projections. Perception, sharpened by patience, becomes protection. Most people rush to conclusions. They react to tone, body language, assumptions, and stories they tell themselves. But the Stoic pauses. He studies patterns. He notes how people treat those who can do nothing for them. He watches how someone responds to failure, to praise, to discomfort. Over time, this awareness becomes intuition, and that intuition becomes foresight. It's not magic, it's just attention, repeated. Consider Eleanor Roosevelt, she once said. Small minds discuss people, average minds discuss events, great minds discuss ideas. But what she didn't deny was that people are still data. Their actions, repeated enough, reveal their core values. And the wise do not ignore that data. They learn from it, quietly, consistently, without arrogance, without malice. Marcus Aurelius spent a lifetime surrounded by advisors, officials, and power seekers. Yet in his meditations, he reflects not just on his own mind, but on the traits of others. He studied their patience, their anger, their generosity, their arrogance, not to gossip, but to sharpen his own character. He used their behaviors as mirrors, as warnings, as models. To know yourself, he believed, you must understand the human animal, not in theory, but in motion, not through abstraction, but through daily contact. So how do you apply this? Start by observing more and interpreting less. Instead of labeling someone rude or kind, ask, what did they do? When? How often? What changed in their tone, their posture, their priorities? You're not making judgments. You're training awareness, and that awareness will one day protect you when charm is used to manipulate or when silence hides resentment. The more you see, the less you are surprised. Observation also reveals your own blind spots. The traits you find irritating in others often point to wounds you haven't healed. The behaviors you admire show you the type of person you're becoming. The Stoics weren't passive observers. They were strategic. They watched others not to feel superior, but to grow more honest about themselves. They understood that what you notice repeatedly in others is often what you most need to understand in yourself. So the next time you walk into a room, let your first instinct be to study, not speak. Watch the dynamics. Notice the subtle tells. Pay attention to how people listen, and when they stop, ask yourself not just what they say, but what their silence says. Over time, this quiet practice will build a quiet power. Because real intelligence isn't loud, it's perceptive, and the one who watches with care sees what others miss, and therefore suffers less. Number 14, pay attention to your surroundings. To the Stoics, awareness wasn't just an internal practice. It extended outward, to nature, to people, to patterns, to timing. Seneca reminded us that life gives us signs long before it gives us consequences. The question is, are we present enough to notice them? Most people walk through life on autopilot, eyes down, mind elsewhere, distracted by what happened yesterday or what might happen tomorrow. But Stoic intelligence lives in the now. It sees what most people miss because it's not rushing ahead. It's watching, listening, picking up subtle cues in the environment that signal change, both danger and opportunity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Observe constantly that all things take place by change. The world is never still. A wise mind doesn't resist change. It studies it. It asks, what is this moment asking of me? Instead of, why is this happening to me?" And that shift in attention from reaction to observation is a form of liberation. The more present you are, the more prepared you become. Paying attention to your surroundings isn't about being paranoid. It's about being prepared. The weather of a person's mood, the tension in a room, the energy of a conversation. These are clues, and just like a sailor reads the sky, a Stoic reads the situation, not to control it, but to move with it skillfully. Awareness is the compass of wisdom. Consider Leonardo da Vinci. His notebooks are filled with tiny sketches and observations about trees, rivers, machines, people's expressions. He believed that genius was simply attention applied with care. He didn't wait for brilliance to strike. He studied everything, because everything contained a lesson, a movement, a principle, a pattern. His greatness wasn't sudden. It was accumulated from thousands of silent moments of noticing. Or take Bruce Lee. He said, "Be like water." But he didn't just mean be flexible. He meant know your surroundings, adapt to them, flow with them without losing form. That's a Stoic mindset, one that sees external chaos not as a threat, but as a call for deeper presence. He watched before he acted. He sensed before he moved. And that sensing made him unpredictable and powerful. So how do you cultivate this habit? Start by asking simple questions. What's happening around me right now? What do I notice that others are missing? What's the energy in this space? Who's speaking most and who isn't being heard? These are not just observations, they're intelligence. And they give you an edge, not over people, but over your own ignorance. With practice, these questions will become a reflex, a way of seeing deeper. The Stoics weren't just locked in their own thoughts. They were students of reality, and reality speaks always. It speaks in tone, in silence, in patterns, in shifts. It speaks through weather, through mood, through rhythm. The question is, are you still enough to hear it? Because wisdom isn't just found within, it's found in the way you relate to the world around you, moment by moment, signal by signal. Number 15, sleep when your body needs it. We often think of intelligence as productivity, pushing harder, staying up later, outworking everyone else. But true wisdom, Stoic wisdom, knows that rest is not laziness. It is strategy. Sleep is not a luxury. It is a non-negotiable pillar of clarity, energy, and decision-making. Just as a blade must be sharpened and a bow must be unstrung, so too must the mind be allowed to rest. Even machines break down without proper maintenance. Why would a human be any different? Seneca wrote, "The mind must be given rest. It will rise improved and sharper after a good break." Yet today we glorify exhaustion. We wear it like a badge. But what use is mental strength if the instrument, your brain, is running on fumes? Even the Stoics, who practice discipline and endurance, never praise burnout. They praise balance, they praise rhythm, and they praise being in tune with nature, because sleep is part of nature's rhythm. Science now confirms what ancient wisdom already knew. Sleep clears toxins from the brain. It consolidates memory. It restores emotional stability. Without it, even the sharpest mind becomes reactive, foggy, impulsive. And no matter how much willpower you have, you cannot outthink a tired brain. You can only override it for so long before the cost becomes unbearable. A sleep-deprived mind sees shadows where there are none, danger where there is safety, and confusion where there was once clarity. Consider Charles Darwin, known for his groundbreaking work. He was also a man of strict routine. Work, rest, walk, nap. He understood that deep thinking required deep recovery, and it was in those quiet, rested moments that connections crystallized. He didn't hustle himself into brilliance. He gave his brain space to breathe. Or take Arianna Huffington, who after collapsing from exhaustion, became one of the most outspoken advocates for sleep. She built a media empire, then nearly destroyed her health by neglecting rest. Only later did she realize, sleep isn't the enemy of achievement, it's the foundation of it. Without rest, Ambition becomes self-sabotage. Her transformation didn't begin with more effort. It began with surrendering to the wisdom of rest. The Stoics believed in knowing your limits. They believed in training the body, but also listening to it. They didn't see the body as an obstacle to wisdom. They saw it as the vehicle for it. A tired body clouds the soul, and a tired soul makes poor decisions. You can't carry clarity in a body that's falling apart inside. So how do you honor this in a world that tells you to keep going? Start by listening. When your body whispers, don't wait for it to scream. Build wind-down rituals. Protect your sleep like you protect your peace. Stop glorifying the grind and start respecting your biology. Because intelligence isn't just what you know. It's how you care for the instrument that knows. And no matter how disciplined you are, if you ignore rest, you're sharpening your sword with a broken hand. Wisdom doesn't sprint, it endures, and endurance requires rest. If you want to become smarter, stop chasing cleverness and start building discipline. Intelligence isn't found in cramming facts, but in crafting habits that sharpen clarity, deepen perception, and protect your energy. The Stoics didn't try to impress. They tried to understand, and through daily, quiet practice, they became unshakable. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be consistent. Start small, stay honest, and never stop refining the instrument that is your mind. If this spoke to you, like the video, subscribe, and join us on this path of silent mastery. Your growth begins, one habit at a time.